Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Fabian Calvo, Fabian for Liberty. Is the US dollar the world reserve currency? Is it about to collapse? It's a very important question. I'm going to break that down in this video. I want to thank all of you that took time to complete about a 3 to 4 minute survey that I put out yesterday. We've gotten literally hundreds of responses, and it's going to help me, it's already helped me, produce better content and information that you guys want, which I, again, really appreciate it. If you haven't had time to take the survey, the link is down below. So, all right, I was looking in preparation for this video and looking at different things. I was looking at YouTube videos. I put in, dollar collapse, US dollar collapse, and there was at least 7 videos that I came across that actually had specific dates going back like 5 years, where it's like dollar collapse imminent July 28th. And I've posted those videos before, and if you've seen my work, you've seen those videos, but you'll also notice in the title, there's always a question mark at the end. It's interesting that since I've been talking about these hyper bubbles, and since I've been talking about how the world is in this major central bank created manipulation, hyper bubble insanity, the people that are calling for economic collapse to happen like yesterday, they kind of don't want to interview me anymore. Where I'm just, I believe, giving accurate forecasts, like one is the Dow hitting 20,000. People don't like that, right? Because it doesn't buy into their narrative. And the truth is that if you forecast economics, or for that matter, if you comment on politics or anything, facts change, or facts don't change, but situations change, and you have to go with what's happening, what's changing. If I just say, economic collapse since 2008, as I've said many times before, I will be correct eventually. But that doesn't really help me 8 years later if I'm still making that same call. Okay, so what is the world reserve currency? Real quick. After the US went off the gold standard, the world reserve currency was created. And, people like Henry Kissinger, Richard Nixon were involved in this, where basically they said, okay, well, we won't trade the US dollar for gold anymore. And we need to still have some kind of international demand, because we want the war in Vietnam. We have these deficit spending programs like Medicare and Medicaid that were passed, Social Security that we have to fund, and also, quite frankly, the military-industrial complex and this war machine that's been at war since really Vietnam, and really since World War II. There's always been a boogeyman out there. There's always been some kind of crisis, a Cold War, terrorism, whatever it is, many times funded by the West. I mean, you look at the Chinese communists were financed and funded by the West. It's an actual fact. The predecessor to the CIA actually gave over $20 million to Mao to defeat Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists in China and allow the communist takeover. So this isn't like conspiracy theory. This is actual factual historical evidence and fact. So the world reserve currency is now really what I call, and what's been called, I don't call it, it's often called to, referred to as the petrodollar. And so the quick example is, if you are in Brazil, you want to buy oil, you basically need to use US dollars to buy that oil. And by proxy, it's the world reserve currency, because it's like the way international settlements are handled is in US dollars. Now, of course, that's been changing with bilateral trade agreements, which are getting more and more aggressive. Now, why is it important? Why is the world reserve currency important to the United States? Well, it's important really to the politicians, because they get to spend and deficit spend with impunity, because there's this artificial demand that's created for the US dollar by oil purchases, mostly by Saudi Arabia, who is the leading exporter and demands dollars for their oil. In turn, they take those dollars, they invest it in treasuries in the United States, and the US basically says, look, you continue to do that and we'll protect you militarily. So that's basically the agreement that took place, the petrodollar agreement that took place in 1971 to 1973. Now, here's where that is fallen apart. How it's falling apart, and I wrote down here a list of different reasons of why, what's currently happening when people talk about the end of the US dollar or the end of the world reserve currency, the crash of the petrodollar, which again is going to happen. Just when? Is, recently we had Saudi Arabia come out and say, look, if you released 28 pages of the 9/11 report that implicates us in 9/11, which we all know, we don't need the report to tell us, it starts with Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of other countries involved and a lot of other players involved. They will dump $750 billion worth of dollar assets, basically, and try to retaliate economically. You have the Chinese, who I've documented really well in my book, The Global Economic Reset, where I talked about China's power play to replace the dollar as the new world reserve currency. And again, don't take my word for it. Just research this. They're out and vocal about it. In fact, they have billboards at major airports in Asia talking about how the People's Bank of China will have the new world reserve currency, and for that matter, a gold-backed currency. And also you have, countries like Iran, the Russians who were at play. There's speculation of Gaddafi in Libya wanted a gold-backed dinar. He wanted to break the notion of, using dollars to sell his oil. Same with Saddam Hussein. Many believe that's one of the reasons that we went into these countries, or I should say we, the United States military went into these countries and, basically toppled these dictatorships and toppled, quote-unquote, regime change. So there's all of these things that are legitimate and true happening right now that are causing this fracture in the dollar and in the world reserve currency. And of course, the biggest one is these bilateral trade agreements with China has forged the way, opting out of trading in the dollar and basically not having to pay the Washington broker fee and engaging with countries where they trade their own currencies and use their own currencies. Now, here's the thing though. What's currently going to happen, and again, I wrote a bunch of notes here, is that if these countries, let's say, made a move, and this is where people are wrong, and the ones that are saying, oh, it's going to be world reserve currency crashing next week. No, it's not. It's not going to happen. The petrodollar is not going to crash next week. Is it going to crash? Again, it is. But can it happen now? I believe it won't. And here's why. You have the economy in complete chaos. You have not only GDP growth here in America at negative. Look at Europe, is still absolutely on fire with debt loads. Look at Japan and all these other countries that are now in negative interest rates. Look at the Middle East on complete fire. China has massive, massive debt, the number one accumulator of debt since 2008. Russia's still hurting economically from sanctions that were imposed over Ukraine. So if any of these countries made this power play right now, it would damage their economy. Would it hurt America? Yes, it will, but it would damage their economies equally. And in countries like Saudi Arabia and China, they can't deal with a crushing economic depression because it leads to revolution. And make no mistake about it, they know this, okay? Here at America, we'd have electronic bread lines until they run out. People that are living on $1 a day in China or in Saudi Arabia, they starve to death. And when they start seeing their kids starve to death, they're out in the streets willing to kill to change whatever system they believe has caused that. So that's why we won't have it. Now, will we have it go down? We will have it go down. There is no question about it. And here's the thing. We talk about economic destruction. What else destroys economies? Well, what else destroys economies is war. And there is this popular myth out there that somehow war is good for the economy, which couldn't be farther from the truth. It's not. It's actually bad for the economy. It misdirects resources towards blowing things up and then rebuilding it. And it's not good for the economy. It's been proven. The point is this, is that economically, I don't believe there will be a shift until there is some kind of larger regional war that destroys many of these economies that then call for a change in the way that they handle international settlements and the way that they handle the US dollar. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, what can you do about it? Well, what you can do about it, and I should say forecasting, I'm going to release a few dates here this week on kind of what I'm hearing from guys on Wall Street that I talk to, different high net worth people that I know, and what they're saying and what I believe, and I'm going to be releasing those dates here in a couple of weeks, but just again, or in the next week, but know that I could be completely wrong. And take your, trust yourself, do your own research, never take my word for it. But here's what you can do. People ask me all the time, what should I invest in? I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you the best investment that I've made is investing in myself, and whether it was starting a business or learning some kind of trade or it was learning some kind of skill set in my thing, it's working with entrepreneurs, starting businesses, or it's real estate investing. It's all these couple of things that I've gotten good at, and that's what I do. But I would invest in yourself. That's what you can do. Regardless of what happens with the economy, and I've given plenty of examples of this, we are in the golden age of business. Make no mistake about that. The doom and people that are like, doom porn and that, everything's going to hell, they don't like to hear that. I don't care. because I know what's fundamental truth based on history. Even in the worst economic collapses, there have been thriving business owners. There's been thriving ideas that led to revolutionary change. That will not cease to exist. That will always continue. The question is, what side you want to be on? You know, one last quick thing I'll say is that in looking over survey results, it's amazing. I love the fact an overwhelming majority of you that watch my videos are business owners and entrepreneurs. It's really awesome where you have an expressed interest in that. And I think that's great. You know, entrepreneurs are the ones that could reboot this economy when the global economic reset does happen, which I believe will happen. It's not a myth, it's a historical fact. It's happened 6 times before. I'm Fabian Calvo, Fabian for Liberty. Thanks for watching. Remember, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. I do a live webinar on real estate investing. Check that out. And I totally spaced it today, but I promise every Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. I got a Periscope video that I'm doing. If you haven't checked me out on Periscope, check that out. And they're different than these videos, more kind of like personal growth tied into economic forecasting, tied into business. I think you'll really enjoy it. Again, thanks for watching. I'm out.